The most twisted case you have ever heard. Joseph Edward Duncan III. Joseph Edward Duncan III, February 25, 1963 to March 28, 2021, was an American convicted serial killer and child molester who was on death row in federal prison in conjunction with the 2005 kidnappings and murders of members of the Groening family of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. He was also serving 11 consecutive sentences of life without parole in conjunction with the same crimes, as well as the 1997 murder of Anthony Martinez of Beaumont, California. Additionally, Duncan confessed to, but hadn't been charged with, the 1996 murder of two girls, Sammy Jo White and Carmen Cubias, in Seattle, Washington. At the time of the attack of the Groening family, Duncan was on the run from a child molestation charge in Minnesota. Growing up in Tacoma, Washington, Duncan had a criminal history dating to when he was 15 years old. In 1980, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison for sexually assaulting a boy in Tacoma, and as a result had spent all but 8 years of his adult life in prison. He was paroled in 1994, but was returned to prison in 1997 for violating the terms of his parole. In May 2005, Kootenai County, Idaho, authorities discovered the bodies of Brenda Groening, her boyfriend, and her 13-year-old son in the family home near Coeur d'Alene. Authorities also noted that Groening's two other children were missing, Jasta, age 8, and Dylan, age 9. After an intense search for the two children, Shasta was found alive with Duncan at a restaurant in Coeur d'Alene nearly 7 weeks later, and he was arrested in conjunction with her kidnapping. When the authorities rescued Shasta, she told them that Duncan said that he was bringing her back to her father because Duncan had changed his mind about killing her. She further said that Duncan stated that she taught him how to laugh. Dylan's remains were found days later in a remote area near St. Regis, Montana. Duncan was subsequently charged with murdering Dylan as well as the 3 victims in Coeur d'Alene. During his incarceration, authorities connected Duncan with the unsolved murders of Anthony Martinez in California and 2 girls in Seattle, which all occurred during Duncan's parole from 1994 to 1997. Of those murders, Duncan was charged only in the California case. In all, Duncan was convicted in Idaho for kidnapping and murdering the 3 victims in Coeur d'Alene, for which he was given 6 life sentences. In federal court for kidnapping Shasta and Dylan Groening and murdering Dylan, for which he was given 3 death sentences and 3 life sentences. And in the state of California for kidnapping and murdering Martinez, for which he was given 2 life sentences. In March 2021, it was reported that Duncan was suffering from a terminal brain tumor. Court filings reveal he underwent brain surgery in October 2020 after being diagnosed with glioblastoma stage 4 brain cancer. He declined treatment from either chemotherapy or radiation therapy. In November 2020, medical staff at the Federal Bureau of Prisons estimated he had between 6 and 12 months left to live. Duncan died on March 28, 2021, at the age of 58. Early life and criminal history. Joseph Edward Duncan III was born in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, on February 25, 1963. He was the 4th of 5 children born to Joseph Edward Duncan Jr. and Lillian May Duncan. He had 3 older sisters and a younger brother. Duncan's father was in the United States Army, and because of this, the family moved from city to city, both within the US and abroad, changing locations every year or 2 until the elder Duncan retired to Tacoma, Washington. Duncan's mother was described as a domineering woman, but although he claimed after being arrested in 1980 to have been abused as a child, his younger brother disputed this. Duncan's parents divorced in 1979. His sister soon left the household and Duncan remained behind with his mother, while his brother went to live with their father. His father would later remarry, giving Duncan a stepfamily. Duncan attended Lakes High School but did not graduate. Duncan had a long history as a violent sexual predator. He committed his first recorded sex crime in 1978, when he was 15 years old. In that incident, he raped a 9-year-old boy at gunpoint. The following year, he was arrested for driving a stolen car. He was sentenced as a juvenile and sent to the Jesse Disley Boys Ranch in Tacoma, where, according to a report by the Associated Press, he told a therapist assigned to his case that he had bound and sexually assaulted 6 boys. He also told the therapist that he estimated that he had raped 13 young boys by the time he was 8. In 1980, Duncan stole a number of guns from a neighbor and abducted a 14-year-old boy, raping him at gunpoint. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison for this crime, but was released on parole in 1994 after serving 14 years. While out on parole, Duncan is known to have lived in several places in the Seattle area. He was arrested again in 1996, this time for marijuana use, and released on parole several weeks later with new restrictions. Authorities believe that Duncan murdered Samillo White and Cameron Cuyas in Seattle in 1996 and Anthony Martinez in Riverside County, California in 1997 during his parole period. However, both those cases went cold and were not tied to Duncan until after his arrest in the Growney case. Duncan was arrested in Missouri and returned to prison in 1997 after violating the terms of his parole. He was released from prison on July 14, 2000, with time off for good behavior and moved to Fargo, North Dakota. In March 2005, Duncan was charged with the July 3, 2004 molestation of 2 boys at a playground in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. On April 5, 2005, he appeared before a Becker County judge who set bail at $15,000 United States dollars. A Fargo businessman with whom Duncan had become acquainted helped him post bail. However, Duncan skipped bail and disappeared. On June 1st, a federal warrant was issued for Duncan's arrest on the charge of unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. Idaho murders and kidnappings. On May 16, 2005, authorities discovered the bodies of Brenda Growney, 40, her boyfriend, Mark McKenzie, 37, and her son, Slade Growney, 13, in their home along Lake Coeur d'Alene, outside the city of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. 2 of Brenda's other children, Dylan, 9, and Shasta, 8, were missing. An Amber Alert was issued and searchers combed the area for the missing children, while authorities investigated the death of the home as homicides. Autopsies determined the cause of death to be blunt trauma to the head. Authorities also noted that the victims had been bound. 7 weeks later, in the early morning hours of July 2, 2005, Shasta was seen at a Denny's restaurant in Coeur d'Alene in the company of an unknown man. A waitress, manager, and 2 customers at the restaurant recognized the girl from media reports. They surreptitiously called police and positioned themselves to prevent the man from leaving. Police officers arrived at the restaurant and arrested the man, later identified as Duncan, without incident. Shasta identified herself to a waitress at the restaurant and to authorities, and was taken to Kootenai Medical Center for medical treatment and to be reunited with her father. Coeur d'Alene police, meanwhile, detained Duncan on kidnapping charges and on his outstanding federal warrant. When Shasta was found without Dylan, authorities held little hope of finding the boy alive. Police asked the public for tips, specifically with respect to sightings of the stolen red Jeep Cherokee with Missouri license plates that Duncan was driving at the time of his arrest. Authorities discovered that Duncan had rented the car in Minnesota and never returned it. A gas station employee in Kellogg, Idaho, about 40 miles (64 kilometers) east of Coeur d'Alene, recognized the vehicle as one that had stopped at her station hours before Duncan was arrested. The employee suspected the girl wandering around the station might have been Shasta, but did not confront her as nothing appeared out of the ordinary. The employee and her manager notified authorities after reviewing surveillance camera footage and identifying Duncan and Shasta in the video. On July 4, 2005, investigators found human remains at a remote makeshift campsite in the Lowland National Forest near St. Regis, Montana. The remains were sent to the FBI lab in Quantico, Virginia, for DNA testing and were positively identified as those of Dylan. During the trial, it emerged that Duncan shot Dylan at point-blank range by holding a Sarov 12-gauge shotgun to his head. In part 2 of the video, we will talk more about his criminal cases and how he performed them. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and check these next 2 videos out.